Hey Bookaholics, and welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about the most disappointing books of 2023. I thought I would start this on a low note because then it can only get better, right? With all of the wrapping up books, series, etc. from the previous year. So I thought this is the best place to start because then after that it's all positive. Now, this is going to be books that are either standalones, continuations in series that I had not started this year, and so forth. So if you want to know about series that I have DNF'd or rated low, then that will be in my series wrap up, which is coming. So for now, this is literally just, like I said, standalones, continuations, etc. Or starting a series that I had intended to start even. And yes, this is going to be, I'm going to start with my 3 DNFs. And then after that, I'm going to go into books that I did finish, but that I was disappointed in some way, shape or form. The usual disclaimer of if you love these books, fantastic, great for you. This is not me saying that these are bad books. I will explain why they didn't work for me personally. And that's the thing about reading, isn't it? It's that we all have different tastes, different preferences. It'd be really bloody boring if we all just like the same thing. Please don't take this personally. If there is a book that you would like on here, it's not a personal attack. I desperately wanted to love these books. They just weren't for me. With that out of the way though, let's get into the DNFs. I DNF'd 3 books this year, and I'm not big on DNFing, as you may have noticed. The first one that I DNF'd was Essex Dogs by Dan Jones. Now, this is arguably not a bad book. I have seen mixed reviews for it, so it's clearly one that is quite hit or miss for people. A lot of people giving it 5 stars, absolutely loving it. A lot of people seem to feel the same as I do. Now, Dan Jones is a non-fiction author, predominantly. This is his first foray into fiction. So one of the things that I feel came across about him being someone who normally writes non-fiction is that my biggest problem with his work was the characters, which of course to someone who normally writes non-fiction is not relevant. So I really appreciate that it is very historically accurate. There's a lot to it that is very informative. I would pick up a non-fiction for that. So for a fictional story, I did find that I didn't connect with any of them. It was a little bit of the where is the women style historical fiction, which I am trying to move away from. I don't find it as very enjoyable. And then on top of that, I also found that the characters themselves were interchangeable. It was very dude bro, and it didn't work for me because of that. I didn't connect with any facet of the story because I didn't care about the characters, and it's a book that is trying to pretend to be character orientated. I know a lot of people also had problems with the level of language that is used. That's not something that bothers me, but do bear that in mind also if this is a book that still sounds interesting to you. Essex Dogs is the story of the Essex Dogs, which are basically during the 100 Years' War for the British. They are basically the ones that you send in first. They are the, landing on the beach in Normandy type characters, and it's a group of guys that are slightly cannon fodder, but they're just kind of good at what they do, and that's why they keep surviving. Again, it's about the camaraderie between these characters. It's seeing the perspective of war from people who are on the ground, not people calling the shots. So interesting take and an interesting choice of narrative. So that's why I picked it up. It sounds interesting. I just didn't care about the characters. So for it to be about the Essex Dogs, I didn't care. I didn't care when anyone died. I didn't care what was happening to anyone. I just realised, because I was listening to the audiobook of this, and no shade to the audiobook actually, it was fine. I just kept zoning out, and I think it's because I just wasn't connecting with it. I had no emotional investment, and I'd realised I hadn't been listening for about 10 minutes and didn't care. So I DNF'd, which is a shame because audiobooks are expensive. The next one that I DNF'd, again, arguably a good book. I didn't have a problem with how the book was written. It's very specific to this book why I DNF'd it. And that is Let the Right One In by John Ajvide Lindqvist. This one is a horror vampire story in which we are following a young boy who is getting bullied at school. And then next door moves a young girl and seemingly her carer. And it turns out that this girl is actually a vampire. It is about their relationship between each other, and that aspect I really liked. However, the girl's carer is actually a man who is a paedophile, and he also is the one that is killing people to feed the vampire. Now, him being a paedophile is done in the sense of this story where you clearly have it that he is interested in caring for her because she is an adult, because she's like 200 years old, but she's in the body of a child, which again, creepy, but we also get his perspective. So we get to see and hear his thoughts on her, on wanting to touch her, on being attracted to her. And I couldn't stomach it. I got to, I think, 100 pages in, maybe less, and I had so many scenes already that made me physically want to vomit. And again, it's not condoning his behavior at all. At no point is this man considered a good person. So it's not condoning that behavior, but I don't want to be in that person's head. Even if it is like, you know, even if you see him get his comeuppance later, or if it's about moral ambiguity or something, I don't care what the end game of that is. I don't want to be in that person's head. So I DNF'd this book. It was making me so uncomfortable, and it's just not something I can hack, and that's fine. So basically I dropped this one because of trigger warnings, which is fine, and it's a perfectly valid reason to DNF. This actually was going to leave the house and I wouldn't have a physical copy of it anymore, but my charity shop is currently full, which is great, but it meant that I couldn't give books in. So I actually have it here for now, but it is going because I have no need of it. And my final DNF is arguably my most heartbreaking. It is a book that I desperately wanted to love, and I really struggled with, and I feel so bad. It was putting me in a reading slump because I wanted to finish this book and persevere. But that is The Lives of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is the story of Locke Lamora, who is the leader of a group of thieves known as the Gentleman Bastards. They were kind of all orphans. They've all been trained to be really good thieves and con men, and they are all following Locke as he undertakes a heist that is arguably too big for his means. This is a very character-orientated story, I think, and I couldn't connect with the characters. And then on top of that, I could not connect with Scott Lynch's descriptions. For some reason, I could not visualize anything. I know this is a pseudo-Venetian setting, but I kept picturing Victorian England because it constantly reminds me of Oliver Twist. So I kept picturing things, and then it would contrast with what was being said, and I had to try and reconfigure that in my brain, and it would take me out of the story because I wasn't picturing it correctly. So I'm a really visual reader. I do have Fantasia, which means that basically the book plays out like a movie in my head, and that wasn't happening. So then that's how I am used to consuming books. So then when that wasn't happening, I was like, what is any of this? Like, I wasn't processing it at all. And I kept trying to push through, but every page I'd have to like reread a couple times because I'd be like, wait, what? Trying to picture things, trying to connect with characters. I heard so much about how amazing the friendship between the characters were, and I just wasn't feeling it because I didn't connect with the individuals. And then there were parts in the logic that I really struggled with as well. I think possibly because I wasn't understanding the characters the way the author clearly wanted me to, it didn't make sense to me. So I struggled with the logic because of the characters, and I struggled with picturing it because of the descriptions. So all round, just none of it was working for me. And then I didn't care about the plot because I was too busy trying to figure everything else out. So it just didn't work for me, and I'm absolutely gutted because I really wanted to love this because I had heard such amazing things about this series, which is probably for the best because who knows when this series is ever going to conclude. But it's a shame, and I'm sad, and we're moving on now. Now we're going to get into books that I did actually finish, but that I was disappointed by. All of these, I think, are 2-star reads, so do with that what you will. The first one is a non-fiction, and that is Invisible Women, Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men by Caroline Gliadovich. Now this is one that there was lots that I took away from that I thought was really important. And then when I was getting towards the end of the book, there was a section about bathrooms, and initially even that I was agreeing with. And then the transphobia came in, and then I realized that I had been assuming this whole time that this book included trans women, but then I realized that that had been my brain doing that, not the book. Because then I looked back on things and I was like, you don't mean trans women. I mean, she barely meant queer women. So it was quite heteronormative. It was very transphobic. It was such a shame because there were so many valid points that then to me felt not the same because it included transphobia. And if you are someone who is transphobic, you can leave. Like, this is not the place for you. We're not going to agree. Leave, please. Just don't comment. Just unsubscribe and leave, because that is why I DNF this book, because it is transphobic. Yes, a book about women should include trans women. And if you disagree with that, bye. See you later. Thank you very much. The next one is a graphic novel, which is Rondallas by Santi Casas. Well, it's actually a Spanish manga. And this is one that I picked up. It looked like it was going to give me like loads of dark atmospheric vibes. It's got divine characters in it. It is like almost like these fictional mythologies told with this dark atmospheric vibe. It's got some great artwork. Let's see if I can find some for you. It's got some great artwork going on that I was really excited for, and I just didn't care about the stories at all. None of them felt very unique or very innovative, and then on top of that, a lot of them felt very alpha macho. It's one of the reasons I don't read manga is that there is this very like decisive line between masculine and feminine. Western manga, that is. Western manga, from what I've read of like Spanish manga especially, there is a very decisive line between manly men and womanly women, and I can't be bothered, to be honest. So this is going, it's leaving the house. It wasn't for me. None of you care because none of you have ever heard of it before. Getting into ones that you arguably probably have heard of, I'm going to start with The Light of Midnight Stars by Rina Rosner. Now, I really liked Sisters of the Winterwood. I had a fantastic time with that book. It was beautiful. I found it absolutely gorgeous. I loved one book, didn't like the other. This one is about three sisters. I've forgotten so much. Three sisters who are Jewish and they lived in Hungary. And then this kind of purge against Jewish people came through the land. And we have these girls that are then pretending not to be. They have magic that's associated with Judaic mythologies and histories. And there were a lot of things that were seemingly going to be completely what I wanted. But the problem is, if you've read one Rina Rosner book, you've read all of Rina Rosner's books, because in the first book that I read, in Sisters of the Winterwood, you have one sister whose story is told in verse and one sister whose story is told in prose. And I thought that was amazing because it showed so much about the personalities of these sisters. It completely gave me Sense and Sensibility vibes. It was stunning. This one, you have one sister whose story is told in verse, one whose is told in epistolary form, so letters and diary entries, and then you have one sister whose story is told in standard prose, which fantastic, except that it didn't read any different to Sisters of the Winterwood. I didn't care about the characters. There was some really, really questionable romantic things going on in this story as well. I just didn't connect with it. Like, it felt like, in the first book, it felt like she chose prose styles or narrative styles to reflect the sisters' personalities. In this one, it feels like that went well for her the first time, so this time she has chosen personalities to shoehorn into the narrative style, so like the inverse of the first one. So I struggled with this one. I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the previous one, and I am sad about that. Anyway, the next one that I have is House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J Maas. This one is an adult epic fantasy romance that is the second book in the Crescent City series. I think most people were pretty disappointed by this one. I have seen some hardcore stands of Sarah J Maas not enjoy this one. This one, I didn't try and do anything. I didn't care about characters that I absolutely adored in the first book. There is so much hinging on Danica. Danica is a character that in the first book is our protagonist's main reason to do anything, main motivator, which I thought was fantastic because it means that you're not using the love interest. But apparently this best friend has so many secrets from her friend. She had a whole lot of freaking life. Like, I would be like, do I even know this person at this point? And I didn't care about anyone's motivations. I didn't know why anyone was doing what they were doing. Why, like, what they were doing half the time. And there was so much in here that was not necessary, that amounted to nothing. It didn't create any kind of character growth, didn't add anything to the plot, and by the end of it, it wasn't even adding suspense. It was just creating tedium. So I had a not great time with this one. I am absolutely gutted because I really did like the first one. So we'll see how the third one concludes. I will be concluding the trilogy, but with less enthusiasm. Another continuation to a series that I was super disappointed by, and that is Light Fantastic by Terry Pratchett, the second Discworld book. Now this one, I think, like, I was forewarned about the first couple of Discworld books. Now, I had heard that The Colour of Magic, which is the first book, was the worst. And I quite liked The Colour of Magic. So then when I went into this one, I was like, well, maybe I'll like it. Shouldn't have gone in with that mindset. I should have gone in still thinking, yep, this is not one of the best. Because it's not. I didn't like this one as much as The Color of Magic, and I think it was an expectations thing. I'm still super excited to continue with the Discworld. Like, I had been forewarned about these. It's just my own stupid fault. So I'm super excited still to continue Discworld, but this is, as everyone said, not one of the best. Continuing on with well-loved authors that have let me down this year, I have Neil Gaiman and I have Smoke and Mirrors. Now, this is a collection of short stories by Neil Gaiman. It's literally just that. It's a collection of short stories, that no interlinking between them or anything. And when I wrapped this up, I said it's like a lot of authors, what they'll do is they'll have like a notebook where they write down ideas for stories. And they're normally the ones that it's like, okay, that's not really going to amount to anything, but I'll just write it down just in case. And it's almost like the publishers got their hands on Neil Gaiman's notebook of ideas and were like, yeah, that'll do, and just published it. Because like there are so many things in here that I was like, you really thought that we needed that, huh? You really thought that part of the universe needed these stories, really? Because I love Neil Gaiman. I love Neil Gaiman's writing. Even some of his like less loved works I have liked, but this one was not it. So yeah, not my favorite Neil Gaiman, and it's leaving and never coming back, and I'm not sad about it. And the final one that I have on this list is Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. I'm stepping away from Greek mythology retellings. I have a few on my shelf, and then after, I'm not purchasing anymore. I'm done with Greek mythology retellings, and Ariadne is kind of, it's the straw that broke the camel's back a little bit. There are too many. We've been saying this for a while in the fantasy sphere. There are too many Greek mythology retellings at this point. I'm not interested in any more. I didn't care about Ariadne. I didn't feel like we got much more from her than we just do from the main story. Like, if you know Greek mythology, like, you don't need to read this. It doesn't add anything to the story. I don't feel like I care more about Ariadne, or that she feels more like a real person. So I don't really understand the point of this unless it's an introduction to that story. But like, who doesn't know the story of the Minotaur and Labyrinth and all of that? So yeah, I don't care. And it's a shame, but it is what it is. It's going, it's leaving, and I'm done with Greek mythology. But that is everything from me for today. So a bit of a downer of a video, but it means that there's only good things to come. So thank you ever so much for watching, and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon. Bye guys.